Today, I am super honored to have my capoeira teacher here in Austin, Gui, to be our guest. Could you tell the listener a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So first of all, I would like to thank Angie Algodão for inviting me for this interview podcast. And my name is Guilherme Torres. My capoeira name is Pinga Fogo. I am originally from Brazil, from São Paulo, Brazil. And I started capoeira when I was 5 years old, and I'm still doing capoeira. So I grew up in Brazil, and I moved to the United States back in 2003.
So, what was the first, like, how did you start capoeira at 5?
Yeah, so my master is also my uncle. So at the time, when I was like about like 3, 4 years old, my parents they got divorced, and my father he moved away from my hometown for a couple of years, and at this time I got very attached to my uncle because I have 2 sisters, and I was the only boy at home, you know. So and my uncle would carry me, you know, like all over the place with him. And of course, he was already like teaching capoeira at the time. And out of Sunday, you know, like I started taking classes. At the time, there were not many kids taking capoeira classes, so I would follow, you know, like the adults class, and that's pretty much how everything started. You know, when I realized that I was already like doing capoeira for many years. Yeah, but that's pretty much how everything started. Yeah.
So, we mentioned some terms that listeners might not be super familiar with. Like you just call me Agudon. That's actually my capoeira name. It's Portuguese. And when we practice capoeira, we mostly learn stuff in Portuguese. And when we practice capoeira, there's some instrument here. It's a little deceptive, but you can see like we will be dancing, we'll be singing, we will be playing, not fighting, we called it playing. So I remember the first time when I was in the capoeira setting, I was so shocked by how alive I was in the setting. And when I was coming to the States, moving here to Austin with Paul, I started searching for capoeira gu, and then I found Guy. And I remember every time in class, no matter how tired I was before arriving in the class, immediately when I step in, there is energy going on that just like lighten me up. And it's like whenever I feel down, whenever I feel I'm depleted, I know I should go train capoeira because that's where I got my energy from. So like there's a lot of super interesting, super fascinating thing going on with capoeira. Could you tell the listeners a little bit, like just briefly introduce the listeners what is capoeira?
Yes. Before I tell you about what capoeira is, she mentioned about the capoeira names, which is the apelidos or nickname. And the nicknames, a lot of people they think is just because it's fun, you know, for everyone to have a nickname. But there's a reason behind that. Back in 1800s, capoeira was prohibited in Brazil because you know, like most of the people that would do capoeira on the streets, they were like you know, escaped slaves. So you know, like, and they you know, they could not find like jobs or anything. So what they did, they used the capoeira to fight, to rob, you know, like, and to try to get some money and buy food, right? So, but then if they were giving names around, you know, the cops they would go and find them. You know, it's like Lucas or it's Anthony. So you know, they used to have like capoeira names. So you know, with that being said, like you know, the cops they could not find out who they were. You know, so that's how the nicknames were introduced to capoeira. Okay, so capoeira basically it's an Afro-Brazilian martial arts and dance form that was created in Brazil by the African slaves. So the Africans they were brought from Africa from Portuguese people from Portugal, and they were forced to work on the sugarcane plantations field of Brazil, and with very poorly treatments. You know, like they could not have like any food or a place to stay or to sleep. So they would be like in very like unhealthy environments, you know. And at some point they were just tired of being treated like that, like slaves, and working so hard cutting sugarcane. And whenever they had time off, they would get together with their friends, and starting to plan a way to escape from slavery. But they didn't have weapons, so they had to use their body to fight against slavery. So pretty much to make like the story short, the slaves they would get under like trees again on their time off, and they would start like find different ways to fight, and someone would be on the top of the tree looking for the slave owners. So every time the slave owners would come closer, that person on the tree would tell them, hey, they're coming. So they would pretend they're dancing. So the slave owners would get there, and what they're doing. So, no, they're just dancing. They're clapping, they're dancing. So they would leave. Once they leave, they would fight again. So that's why capoeira it's a martial arts and dance form. Okay, so it's actually one of the few art forms that we have. It's a martial art with dance. Yeah, so that's pretty much what capoeira is.
I like to whenever I tell my friends I'm practicing capoeira, they were like, "Oh, so what kind of martial art is?" And like I will use that it's a martial art that infuses masculine energy and feminine energy at the same time. It's like you fight or you play, but at the same time you have these elements of music and singing going on. And there is a podcast that I heard before. The guest, he is like a trauma specialist. He wrote a book called, I think, oh my god, I forgot. But he talked about like capoeira is a kind of movement form where people get together and then like they fight, but they reconciliate. And it's through this type of conflict and reconciliation that you really feel like you are allowed to show your vulnerability in a group. And that's how a community is formed. Like you don't feel shame in like losing, or you don't feel shame for attacking people, because at the end of the day people celebrate whatever you do, and then you are always like whatever you do, like you are always part of it.
Yes, yeah, capoeira it's a fascinating, like the way that you just mentioned about people are challenging each other in the circle, in the roda, which we call roda. They're pretty much fighting in a good way, using the techniques, and without the idea it's not to hurt each other, but use the techniques. There are some takedowns, but since it involves like music and a good energy, like they challenge each other, they take each other's down, they do some backflips at the same time, and then at the end of the game, which that's how we call, the game, not the fight, they shake each other's hand, they hug each other, and they're all friends. So it's it is like an environment, as you mentioned before, that the energy is really high. So it's a healing to be in a capoeira circle. Yeah,
right. Healing is the word. Like if I just witness a group playing, I wouldn't think it's healing, but it's really so healing if you're a part of it, like participating in the process.
Yeah, it is, and the music as well. Like it's not just because a lot of people they think it's just because you're playing, you're challenging each other, that it can be like a healing process. But no, playing the instruments and singing and clapping, it's part of the ritual as well, and it can be a healing as well. So just to mention, like few of my favorite capoeira singers, I love them. It's not just because they have a really good voice, but every time they're singing with their heart. Like you can feel they're putting all this feeling on their singing, and that can be very healing as well.
So I'm curious about the music part. Like, I understand when we are moving our body, there are energy moving through and there are some tissue tensions being resolved here. So like that will lead to some mental healing. But like the music part, like the corridor that we sing, sometimes it's just like fun. It doesn't really have super profound, maybe it has super profound meaning, but like on the surface, the literal is like, oh, I spilled the butter, or like just some sound. So why, but I do feel like when we're clapping, when singing with everyone together, there is a different type of energy when we're just playing and practicing. So like from your point of view, why do you think music is also a part of healing in the process?
Yeah, because even though some of the songs in capoeira, they don't have like specific meaning, but as you're singing and you're putting your feeling as you're singing or clapping, we go in like a mantra, and the repetition of that song, and you go on and on and on. Out of sudden, you feel like in a trance. Like you're part of everyone becomes one, and that's where the music can also be a healing.
I have goosebumps now.
Yes.
I never thought about it that way, but it's so true. It's like we are just keep chanting this mantra and then bring us to presence.
Yeah, I've been part of some capoeira rodas, many capoeira rodas, where I also got goosebumps, and I was so emotional just listening to the singer, because sometimes it's not how many songs or how often they are changing the songs, but sometimes it's really getting into like a mantra and repeating the same songs. So I remember this specific roda was part of that. The singer started to sing Paranauê, which is one song that we sing, and out of Sunday I realized that he was singing that song for 10 minutes. 10 minutes non-stop, the same song, and everybody was responding, and you could see, because he was sending this energy to the roda, was not like boring or like, oh, again, like the same song. No, everybody was like responding and getting into that energy, good energy. So yeah.
As we'll talk about more like the practicing later, but I'm curious. So like for me, growing up in Taiwan, there are some like typical martial arts that kids will do, like taekwondo or other stuff. But then we are forced by our parents, because that's what parents take their kids to. And we will mostly just give it up after we have our own will, and we're like, no, we're not going to class. So like you starting practicing capoeira when you're 5, and you're still practicing it. What makes you stick to it all the way?
Yeah, I don't lie to you, I cannot lie to you, but I had, like, of course, during like when I was like teenager, other things that I was very into too, such like skateboard, surfing, playing soccer in the streets with my friends. So I was not training as much, but I believe what made me stick with capoeira, it was because my uncle, which is my master, he never forced me. If I would disappear from the class for a month, he would be okay. He would be okay. He would not force me. No, you have to go back. You have to train. So that's pretty much how I introduced the capoeira to the kids here in the US. Back in Brazil as well, but here, like I let them be kids. Like I let them to enjoy the process. And I believe that was one of the reasons that I still practice capoeira. And another reason that I can tell you, it's I feel that capoeira it's endless learning. You know, it's not something that you reach certain like level and there's nothing else to learn. You know, like every single day I have something else to learn. I believe also that capoeira is so rich in different aspects: music, theory, singing, kicks, flips, and acrobatics, that it's hard for you to be really good in everything. So once you start practicing a lot of like kicks, for instance, you know, you're gonna lack on music, and then you start practicing music, and then your kicks is not getting. So you know, like that makes you always want some more and more and more. You know, it's not something they, you know, like I learned everything, and then there's nothing else to learn. Yeah, yeah. I believe that's something that it keeps me, you know, like always want to see more and learn more. Yeah, yeah.
Have you? So were you like? Would you describe capoeira as your main like career or
It
passion?
is.
Or,
It is.
Have
For
you ever?
many years. I've done some other types of jobs. Back in Brazil, I have a bachelor degree in physical education, so I used to teach PE classes as well. And I had some other jobs, like odd jobs, like work in a factory, Volkswagen factory. You know, like I had some other types of work. However, since I was like maybe 15, 17 years old, I start teaching at my master's academy, my instructor's academy. So since then, I never stopped teaching. You know, so after, you know, like I start teaching, I think I start, you know, like develop this side of my capoeira career, and that I like so much. You know, like I don't see myself doing anything else. Yeah.
What brought you to the States?
So the first time I came to the U.S., I came to teach a workshop for this event that happened in California, and that was back in 1997. And I came to the U.S. just to teach a workshop for a week, and then go back to Brazil. So I pretty much came with my backpack and my carry-on, you know, enough clothes and money to spend like a week and go back. However, back then, capoeira has been in the United States since early 70s. But it's still like 1997, there were not that many capoeira groups in the United States, okay? So being a capoeira teacher, I received a lot of invitation to stay. And I was like, no, you know, like I just came to teach a few workshops, and I'm going back to Brazil. I still have to finish my degree, you know, I'm still in school. But I received so many invitations that I end up staying just with my backpack. And my parents were freaking out. Hey, you went to spend like a week and you're gonna stay there. So anyway, I moved to Chicago. But then I believe for the reason that I was not prepared mentally and in different ways, you know, financially, and I didn't speak any English at the time. So I ended up only spending like maybe like 3 months in Chicago. Another reason was summer in Brazil and winter in Chicago, which you can figure out, you know, like winter in Chicago is not fun anytime. So I ended up moving back to Brazil. But then there was something that planted like a seed in my head. That was like, you know what? I wanna live in the United States. I wanna teach capoeira in the United States. So that was in my mind, and I continue, you know, my life back in Brazil, teaching, traveling in the country to you know, participate of the events. And one of the invitations I had back then was this one to Chicago, another one to Connecticut, and one to teach in Hawaii. which I was like very excited because I love surfing. Anyway, uh, just to make sense what I'm saying, this invitation from Connecticut was a mestre that he has like a performance company where they go to schools to teach workshops, do like shows, performances. So he invited me to go in 1997. I didn't accept. So I was traveling in Brazil in 2003, January 2003. I was in Brazil traveling in Bahia, in northeast of Brazil. And I saw this guy again. And he's like, oh, hey, remember when I invited you like 5 years ago to move to Connecticut and work with me, like the invitation is still here, like if you want. And then I think that's what I needed, like someone to just present and give me another opportunity. And then, of course, 5 years later, I prepared myself a little bit, even though I didn't have any invitation. I prepared myself better, to just, leave the country and move somewhere else. And then that was, like I said, that was back in January 2003. So in August 2003, I moved to Connecticut to work with him.
Okay, there, like, I mean, like it sounds smooth the way you describe it, but I think everyone who went through the immigration process all know, like in real life, there's a lot of things to untangle. So first thing I want to ask you, like, what attracts you about living in the States when you first visited? Because at that time you said you didn't speak English back then, and like, no. So what about this country that attracts you?
Yes, everyone in Brazil, they love everything that it's about America. Like everything.
It's the same in Taiwan.
Yes. So like the music, the movies, the lifestyle, and the American dream, where you can do this and find a job, and I also believe the quality of life, because in Brazil, of course, I would be better. I would be close to my family and friends. However, being a capoeirista in Brazil, there are so many, and they don't give the same value the Americans give to an artist like this. They just see like, oh, another capoeira teacher. So when I saw this opportunity, like when I came here the first time in 1997, and I received so many invitations and people so interested in what I do for a living, I felt the value in my career. So that's something that made me, like decide to move and have a better value for what I do.
And I think like language is really sad. Like language is still the top thing that I'm struggling with about this whole like studying in the States and moving here. So after the first time you came to California and went back, did you start to like preparing to study English or like?
Well, English in Brazil is the second language, right? So we learn in school the basics of English. However, you cannot, we think that we know some English, but once you move to a place where they speak only English, you can tell like, oh, I don't know anything. So anyway, when I first moved to the United States in Connecticut, I moved to Connecticut. The person that I lived with, he was Brazilian, and he was already here for like 20 years. So his English was all set. So he would do everything for me. He would ask, like order food. He would, if I need to buy clothes, he would go with me to the store. And then at some point, he's like, you know what, you need to learn English, like I cannot be your dad for forever, So then I went to school for just a few months, like maybe 6 months. I went to school, and I decided to, like be around Americans and expose myself make mistakes. I still do, you know, like I've been in this country for 21 years and I still make a lot of mistakes. And because I never learned like correctly, you know, like being like in a high school or learn like the proper grammar, you know, so I learned just speaking to other people, you know, pretty much. Yeah, so nowadays I feel more comfortable, but it was like a huge barrier for me in the beginning because I was always depending of someone. Yeah.
Do you have any culture shocks did you have any culture shocks when you just moved here?
Absolutely, yes, yes. In many different ways, you know, like food, climb, you know, because like I said, I could not stay in Chicago because one of the reasons because it was too cold. But then I moved to Connecticut, which is as cold as you know, like Chicago. So you know, the cold was like really something that I was not happy about. So I would say like food, the weather, and making friends to me was a little tricky, you know, because I think I was used to have like very close friends in Brazil, and then once you move to somewhere that it's another country and it's not the same culture, it's hard for you to understand how to make friends, how to create like friendships or group of friends. So yeah, of course, there was like a lot of like cultural barriers. Yeah, in the beginning.
When you encountering these cultural barriers, have you ever thought about moving back to Brazil?
Many times, many times. I cried many times. You know, like thinking about my family, thinking about my like, you know, just catch myself and thinking like, what am I doing here? You know, like why, you know, like why I'm doing this to myself? You know. But then at the end of the day I would rethink and okay, so there are some pros and cons, but I believe the pros it's better than the cons, you know. So so I would, you know, like even having these thoughts, I always decide to no, that's the place I'm gonna stay. Yeah.
Do you remember any like prominent period of time that's when you started to feel like this is a hell yes?
Yes, I remember exactly one time because back then internet was like very poorly, you know, like that we didn't have much access to internet, especially back in Brazil. You know, my parents they never had like internet back then, you know, so all the communication was through phone or letters, right? Writing
Oh my God,
letters.
that feels like such a long time ago.
I know, but I remember that I would write letters every week to my family, every week.
Oh wow.
Yes, so I would go to the post office, you know, everyone in the post office already knew me because I was always there, you know, like sending postcards and letters.
I'm gonna cry
I know,
here.
I know. That was like, you know, like, you know, something that it keeps like always in my mind. And I would spend a lot of money with the phone cards, you know, because a phone card to call to Brazil was like a fortune, you know, and you could talk for like 5 minutes and boom, gone. And, you know, like I would spend a lot of money buying phone cards and call my whole family, all my friends, you know. And then these friends that I was working with that brought me to Connecticut, he said, at some point, he said that to me. Listen, I believe that your body is here, but your mind is in Brazil. So you have to decide what you want to do in your life because I see that you're suffering here. So you either, you know, stay here in the fullest, you know, and live here and be happy here, or move to Brazil, move back to Brazil. And that was like a slap on my face. And I was like, you know what? Yes, I'm wasting my time. My parents, my friends, they're not going to stop loving me because I'm not talking to them as often, or because I'm not sending them letters, or, you know, like, so I stopped, you know, crying and being more like, okay, so that's my choice. That was my choice. You know, nobody forced me to stay here. So if I'm here, it's because I want to be here. So after that point, I start to, thrive, and I start to, teach my own classes. I opened my own capoeira school in Connecticut, and my life went like from like 0 to like 100 in few months. I could feel myself and be happier. Yeah, yeah.
That is such an encouraging story. Like, it's not because some external, like, unpredictable circumstances changes, because inside you have a different narrative about yourself, and that alone is enough to help you change your life.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was the causing me to that suffering. Like I was stopping myself to be happy. And to be successful. I believe that once I decide for good, like, okay, so if I want to live here, I'm going to be happy here. And yeah, and that was it. Like, same thing, you go to the ice cream place, you have chocolate or vanilla, choose, and you have the choice, go back to Brazil or stay here, but you have to choose. And I chose to stay here. Yeah, yeah, and everything else start thriving after that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you see are the differences between teaching capoeira to students in Brazil and to students in the States?
Well, it's been, like I said, it's been 21 years that I've been teaching capoeira here. When I left Brazil, I had a very large group. I had over like 150 students, and a very established capoeira career in Brazil. So I can tell you the difference based in like 20 years ago. I'm not sure how it is how it would be right now. But I think that the lifestyle here in US, it's a really fast pace. Everybody's always like busy, always doing something and running from one place to another. So they do so many activities, So I remember back in Brazil, they would, like students, he or she would train like 3 times a week, plus once on a weekend, and every other weekend they would go to a capoeira event. So they would be more involved than here. That's one of the difference I can tell you. I don't know if that has changed now, but back then, compared to the way I teach here, the way the students respond to it, I believe that's one of the major difference. Yeah, and also, it makes a lot of things makes more sense when you're speak your native language. So teaching someone in Portuguese, the understanding, it's much better than, like, even if you're speaking a good English, to translate what you really want to say. All right, so I believe the same way for you. Like, if you're speaking to someone that from your country, like the way they feel it can translate. It's not going to be the same feeling. So that's something else that I could tell it's a little bit different. Like, sometimes you try to translate that to your students here in the US, and they're like, oh, okay, but they don't really get it. Yeah.
I'm laughing because I remember there is an incident of this cultural identity switch in the class. So, like, I came here like not knowing many Taiwanese people, and I think, like, when I speak English, I developed this English identity of like Angie. Like, I'm more confident, I am more straightforward, and I give less a shit about most stuff. But my Taiwanese Angie is still super humble, and like we learn to like respect the older, or like we learn to be more feminine, or like more gentle. And I came here to Austin, it's mostly my English identity working. especially in capoeira class, it's a more masculine class. So it's a way for me to like exert my energy. And one day I step into the class late, and then you grab a new student or a student that I never seen before, and then she started talking to me in Chinese, in a Chinese accent. And that was a holy shit moment for me. So I started talking to her in Chinese, and I started like immediately see myself changing into a different person. And so like, I think that's a very interesting, like an instance. And also I know in Taiwan, shaming is a good and very effective way of teaching. If you want a student to behave, just shame them. And the parents are totally okay, or even they expect the teacher to shame their kids because they want their kids to perform well. But it's not gonna work for American culture. So like I was thinking, if there's like stuff like this that you notice, you have to change the way you teach capoeira to US students.
Yeah, there are some things that you have to adjust to the culture, right? Back then, the way I used to teach, I was way more strict and like harsh with the students, in a good way, of course, like just to push them to their limits and be like on top of it. And after years teaching here in US, I realized that I was wasting my time, because that was like going against their culture. And some of them, the minority, they would accept. Some others, they wouldn't accept that, but they wouldn't tell me. So I was losing students and without knowing why, and I had to adjust. So nowadays, I use my flow of teaching, where I feel the students like, all right, so if these students, I know that I can push a little harder. These students, he or she, it's more into the acrobatics. So, like I plan my classes based on each person, especially because it's not only Americans in my class, like I have people from all over the world in my class. So culture, it's totally different, like it's not just American thing. So anyway, the way I structure my class, it's based on a feeling, like totally feeling each one, and I go with that. Yeah.
That's one thing I think is super cool to witness, is which I remember when I joined the group for the first time, maybe 2 years ago. There are some other new students that join around the same time as me, and then you can see they're being very like fightsy. They just want to take other people down.
Yeah.
But I dropped out for a few months because of pregnancy. Now I came back again, and I found out everyone becomes so supportive of each other. They lose their age and they lose their ego, and I was like, wow, that is so incredible to witness. Like how did that even happen?
I know, yeah. That's my job, like I try to create an environment where everyone supports each other, and also it's like a safe environment where we leave the ego at the door, and we use our strength to help, and we identify our weakness and to let people help us, and when you start to be in an environment where you feel safe, and you don't feel ashamed to say like, oh, I don't know this, even though I'm training longer than you still can help me, you still can teach me, so once someone new gets to this environment, they start doing the same thing. It's natural, it's automatic. Once they realize that they can, be part of this process, and they can learn. Yeah.
Yeah, you named something that is so important. Like I feel so safe practicing our group. Like I know I don't have to be afraid of making mistakes, and I can just like when I go to the group, I wouldn't be hesitating that, oh, should I go because I feel like I'm stuck at this, and if I go to class, and I wouldn't be blending in, but like I would know like today's capoeira class, I'll just go. There's no like self dialogue, because I know I can always be be myself in a class.
Yeah, but also this is like adults mentality. You know, if I go somewhere to teach something, to learn something new, you know, like I want to do, of course, I want to do my best, but I'm ashamed to, you know, like to do something wrong or to say something that it's not supposed to say. And if you think about kids, you know, they learn, and it's so natural for them to learn because, you know, like they are totally open mind to learn. And if you're blocking yourself in a different areas because you're afraid to make mistakes, what's the point to be in class? If you're in class, it's because you want to learn. To learn, you have to empty your you know, your mind, and have everything open to fill out with some information, you know.
Yeah, you brought out a very a question that I want to ask, which is what's the differences of teaching adults and teaching kids in addition to the one that you mentioned?
Yeah, I love teach capoeira in general, okay, but I also love kids. To teach a child, you have to become a child when you're teaching them, because that's how I see. Okay, I believe that a lot of other instructors, not just capoeira instructors, but any other martial arts instructors, they have their own way to teach. Some of them, they want to be strict, you know, like and be super strict with like a discipline. You know, I believe that teaching kids, you not just have to become a kid, but you also have to gain their trust, you know, in a fun way. So once you're playing with the kids and allow them to be themselves, and you're not like punishing them or saying like you have to do this, you're just gonna earn respect because you're being too strict with them. But once you let them be, you know, like you create like a playful environment, and let them have fun, and then you introduce the discipline as they get the trust, you know, it's so rewarding, you know, like because you see that they're learning something, and you earn their respect at the same time, and you know, like it becomes so easy to teach children. And when I hear from other instructors that they try to teach kids and they, oh my gosh, it's so hard, you know, like I suffer in class, to me it's like easier to teach like 2 hours adults class than teach like 45 minutes kids class. And I tell them it's because of that, you know, like you have to let them play. You have to be like silly and goofy as you're teaching, you know, and know how to, you know, balance things out in class. Otherwise, it's going to be just a mess, you know. So I don't let the class to be a mess. I apply the discipline, but in a fun way. You know, so I play games with them, I be silly, I run, I roll on the floor with them, you know, like, and I think that's the major difference between teaching kids and adults. Adults, you can the way I teach, of course, sometimes I can be silly with them, but it's more like straightforward. You know, like you tell them what to do, you show them, and that's it. You know, and then I just go around and fix one thing here, one thing there, and give some tips here and there. But it's totally different. Two different, totally different worlds. Yeah, yeah.
Like, but even in adults class, I feel like it's an adults playground too. Because sometimes when we are doing warm up, we're doing some fun stuff, like we're doing tags, we're doing like throwing balls, and I was like, I come back and tell Paul, man, I feel like this is really a place for us to like not have to be an adult. Although like the rest of class, we have to be super, like high attention to what's going on.
Yeah, especially because, you know, most people, they're in the office for from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, like they don't want to get to some class and people telling them what to do. Oh, you have to do this. No, it's wrong. Like something too serious. So that's why sometimes I try to break the ice and throw like a game here and there and laugh and make fun of each other. So it's something more like light, like it's more in a fun way.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
So I have a question for teaching kids, for like maybe kids who are a little bit older than my daughter, but who are still too young to understand, like to even master their own motor skills. Like how do you teach kids that young?
Yeah, I use a lot of props. I have a lot of like hula hoops, mats, cones, and things like that. So what I do, I start to my kids class, actually my toddlers class they start with 2.5 years old. So with kids at this age, I try to promote some skill development where, for example, they get the cone and they put on the top of their heads, like meaning, here's your hat. You have to put your hat on your head and you have to walk through the room. So they're gonna, like develop their balance, balance thing on their head, and then different directions. So I put the hula hoop on the floor. Okay, so you have to jump off the hula hoop, inside the hula hoop, and sideways. So I start to create, to work on their skills, their motor skills and sensory skills. And little by little, I start to add some capoeira movements into it. Okay, so now you're gonna place both hands in the middle of the hula hoop and you're gonna jump, you're gonna bring both legs off. So they start to understand what is bananeira, what's the handstand, you know what I mean? So I throw a lot of games with the props, and as soon as I feel that they can do, like, for example, a bananeira, or a benção, like a front kick. So in a fun way, I start to introduce some capoeira skills to it. And of course, the music is a big part of the class. They learn like numbers, they learn the ABCs. So at the same time, they are singing, clapping, they're learning new language. So it's super fun for them. Yeah.
And so for adults class, expectation might be that they were able to like escape a kick, or they're able to do something properly. What are the expectations for kids?
No expectations.
Oh, I love that.
I don't create any expectations, and that's the first thing I tell parents once they drop off the kids or they enroll their kids in my class. Please don't create any expectations, because I am not creating expectations. This way, if you're not creating expectations, you're not putting any pressure on the child. If you're not putting pressure, the learning process happens naturally, and that goes back to the kids class I was explaining to you, like once the child starts to trust in you and whatever you say they do, you say like, you can go to my kids class and I say like, sit down, and everybody sit down. I was just kidding, everybody get up, like if we start to give directions in a fun way, once you talk to them and it's something serious, they're gonna learn. They're gonna listen to you. So that's how the progress of my students happens. Talking about kids. Because I don't create expectations. Yeah.
That is such an unexpected answer. I love that. And also, I'm curious, like, what are some motivations for parents to enroll their kids for capoeira?
That's a very tricky question to me, because I consider myself, like really good in what I do, and I trust myself that I can make a huge difference in children's and adults' lives through capoeira. However, I from outside of the door, like talking about like advertising my classes or being good, very active on social media. This is something that I lack, and I'm not really good into it. So until today, like my main way to capture students, it's just having them taking the class, because once they take one class, it's a different story. So and another thing that I tell my students is this: if you want to invite someone to come to capoeira class, use powerful words, meaning tell them exactly how you feel, or what capoeira has changed, how capoeira has changed your life. So that if you're honest about, and if you are powerful with your words, and be really meaningful when you're inviting someone to come to class, like the chance to bring someone to class is much higher than you just come, hey, I do this thing, it's called capoeira, it's so much fun, you should try. You don't see much like, oh, okay, maybe one day I'll try. But if you go like, look, I'm doing this thing, you have no idea, like, has changed my life, my body, my mind. I learned a new songs, I learned a new language, like, you see the difference when you promote, or you present, the way you present things to someone. So, with that being said, like word of mouth, it's being my main advertisement. Yeah.
I have to say, it's hard to describe our experience of capoeira. It's like beyond words. Like they have to experience it. So it's become a chicken and egg problem. But
yes, but if it can be only a few words. But if you're very, like if you put your emotions when you're talking to someone about capoeira, the chance for them to come to class, it's much higher than just say like, oh, it has changed my life. Well, a lot of things has changed your life. Having pole in your life, it has changed your life. So having your child, it changed your life. But there's a way for you to say that, like, or to present to someone, So yeah, I'm a suspect to say, about capoeira, because every time I open my mouth to talk about capoeira, I'm always like, so emotional, and yeah. Capoeira, it's everything to me. Yeah.
It is a very emotional experience practicing capoeira as well, and you had your first kid a few years ago. How did it change the way you teach capoeira, if any?
So, like I said before, I always, always liked to be around kids. Besides capoeira, I always liked kids. And if it was for me, I would have had my child like 15 years ago, because I was ready. My wife was not ready. So anyway, I believe that having my child, my first child, it didn't change much in terms of teaching, but what he's been teaching me, it's very powerful. He started to showing me things that it's very important in life, that sometimes we as an adult we forget. Such as like walking on a walk, with him on a park. Wow, look how beautiful is this flower. Or, Daddy, look the sun, it's so shine today, like so bright. Or, like, oh, it's raining, it's nice, this is good for the plants, right? It's good for, things like that, as an adult, as like a fast-paced life, we turn on the autopilot 6 in the morning, and then we don't stop until 10 p.m. and we don't notice things like that anymore. So those things I start learn from him. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, my daughter is turning 1 in 2 days.
Oh, nice!
And
Congratulations!
yeah, thank you.
Yay!
And I really also learned so much from her. Like, I think I tend to be too harsh on myself. And so, like, if I can learn maybe a technique as quick as possible, I will be like, I will talk to myself, like, Angie, why are you so dumb? Like, why can't you still master it yet? But then, like, just seeing my daughter picking up motor skills one by one. Like, one day when she was still very young, she was just looking at her right hand in fascination. And that's the time I realized she finally figured out she has a right hand. And I was like, man, like, I actually go through so much transformation in my life, and I took them for granted, or I even think myself it's being not good enough. And I was like, I think I should thank my body more, and I think I should, like, appreciate all my learning experiences more.
Yeah, I believe we as an adults, we take everything for granted. We don't appreciate or we don't celebrate small things in life. And talking about capoeira, for instance, I tell my students that if you're frustrated about your capoeira, just go back like 3 months ago and watch a video of yourself playing capoeira 3 months ago, and then watch now. Or like a year ago, and watch now. And then you're gonna see how much your capoeira has developed. Maybe not in the way that you were expecting, because we put too much pressure on ourselves and we create too much expectations, but you can see the difference, and then you could appreciate more. And I believe that's actually a good way for you to evaluate yourself. Like I have few students that every class at the end, they put their cell phone and they record themselves doing the sequence of the day or whatever movements they learned that night, and they compare like 3 months later, 6 months later.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a good way for you to one day when you feel like frustrated, because you think you suck in certain movements, go ahead and go back and look and see how much you have improved. Yeah,
I like that. And I also really love the expectation, like the no expectation thing you say about kids class. It's funny, like my dream, my first contact with like non-traditional, like a outside of gym type of movement is in Mexico. And at that time, my instructor brought her kid to the class a lot, and I just see them play like capoeira style movement a lot together. And her kid was 7 years old. And so it was so beautiful for me. Every time I saw her videos, I just want to cry. So like sometimes I came back from class and I would do some kicks around Michelle. I was like, why isn't Michelle responding? I was like, okay, I'm having too much expectations. She's not even 1 yet.
See?
But she will look at me with fascination.
Yeah. No, they love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So you later moved from Connecticut to Austin. What brought you to Austin?
Yes. So in Connecticut, after living there for 2-3 years, I ended up opening my own studio with my now wife. At the time, we started dating. She's also from Brazil. And we met in Connecticut, right? So we end up moving in together. And when I was about like living in Connecticut for about like 10 years, every year both of us would complain about the cold weather. And after 10 years, we were just like looking for a warmer place to move to. And because of my traveling, like I travel a lot, I start to pay attention every time I would travel to warmer place to see, is that a good place to move to or to visit and see if it's something that we might be interested. So so I start, paying attention every time I would travel. And then I was invited to come to Austin once to teach a workshop. and I love it right away. As soon as I landed here, I was like, whoa, like totally different from other places in Texas. Because I have been to San Antonio, Houston, Dallas before come to Austin. And then once and I said, look, Texas, no, it's not, it's a no place for us to move. And then once I came here, I told her, I came back home, I was like, fascinated about Austin. And she's like, no, no, Texas, no. I said, you have to come. You have to come. And so we came here. We spent 2 weeks just, exploring. And she loved it. So 3 months later, we packed our things and we moved. And at the time, it was not a very smart move because we didn't plan much. Like I had my studio for about like 7 years at the time in Connecticut with lots of students, and both of us, we had like a very steady income, and out of sudden we just like boom, landing on in Austin with no job or anything. So it was a little, I think was a little like too soon, but we made that work. It was hard in the beginning, but here we were. Yeah.
Sometimes you need that impulse
Yes.
to change a life.
Yes, yes. And we had like a very harsh transition because, besides just taking that decision like too soon, we also we hired a moving company where they lost our belongs.
No,
Yes, that was like, yeah.
that is insane.
Can you imagine like moving to a place where, like you don't know anybody, you don't have a job, and then you don't have your belongs, like everything. Think about like, furnitures and everything. So to make the story short, like we're eating on a plastic plates or like a air mattress for like 8 months because we were always expecting that the moving company would bring our belongings back. And we were calling and hire attorney, everything, and then after 9 months, we just found out that our belongings were like 2 miles from where we were living here in Austin. And the company they filed bankruptcy, and yeah, so we end up we retrieved some of our belongings, but that was just one of the things that was really hard for us in the beginning. But you know what? Since day one, we loved Austin. Yeah, even with this growth that we can see now, like the traffic and the housing, cost, the cost of housing, everything. But we still like love Austin. Yeah.
Yeah, I do feel Austin is such a special place for me too. But like for you, at that time when you moved here, Austin was not even like for us. The reason why we moved here is there are a lot of people doing things like me and Paul do, like they do podcasts, they do writing, but they only moved here after pandemic. So like before then, it was not a train. It was pre-pandemic, so it was not a train to move to Austin. Like what about Austin that attracts you?
I believe that back then, what catch my attention besides the weather was the music, the art, like it was very, it was very, how can I explain that? I believe that, when you go to a place, you feel like, oh, like I feel like home, like everywhere you go, people are talking to you, like and super friendly. And you lived in Connecticut, you know how it is, like at least my experience in Connecticut, like I lived in a high-rise building in Connecticut for the same place for like 6 years. I had about like 10 neighbors in my floor, and we would get the elevator every single day together. They barely said good morning to me. like, and living in Austin for like 3 months, I was already like going to friends' house and barbecue together, like that was something that reminded me Brazil. So I think that was something that, it catch my attention and made me move to Austin. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I agree. After living in Northeast for a while, I was so shocked by how nice people are in Austin. And I remember one time when I just moved here, I was just checking out my stuff at a counter, and the staff was asking me, "How are you?" Like regularly, everyone will ask you if you're checking out stuff. And so I said, "Oh, my day was good." And then he said, "Oh, really? Tell me more about it. What's good about it?" And I was shocked. I was shocked that really no one to know about my life. And like people are so nice to me, I will be very suspicious at the beginning. I was like, what do they want from me? Why are they so nice to me? But it turns out they're just nice because they're nice.
That's what I'm saying. Because I am this type of person. That I would see a stranger and like on the streets and say hi and pick up a conversation with anyone. That's how I am. And living in Connecticut for that long, I'm not talking bad about Connecticut, but I think the community that I was living around, I start to become a person like that, like cold and not talking much with strangers. So when I moved here, I felt that too, like I felt, why these people is talking to me, like I would go to the same supermarket for like 3-4 days, they would call me by my name, like, and I was shocked, but in a good way, like that's something that I really love it. Yeah.
So what was it like to start from scratch teaching capoeira in Austin?
That was hard. I had to, rent studios and pay out of pocket because I had no students, and I would go and on the parks and just do capoeira on my own with my wife because she is also instructor. And then people would ask what it is. I would invite them to come to class. So I started pretty much like with one student, and then sometimes the students wouldn't show up and I had no show, and I would train myself, still paying the studio. And that was like, little by little, one student, and they students brought another student. And yeah, that's pretty much how everything started. But it was really hard, really difficult. I had to have a lot of persistency, determination, to start something from zero. Because that's the thing, I mentioned before, I had to start everything new in Connecticut. I had a very established school in Brazil. I start from zero in Connecticut, and then I start from zero again in Austin, so I knew the way, I knew that would be hard, but I never gave up. I had other jobs here in Austin, but I never gave up. I said, look, one day, again, I'm going to leave out of capoeira, doing only capoeira. That's what I do now. I only do capoeira. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you were telling us this story, I think like 2 years ago, at one of the end of year Hoda, and everyone is becoming very emotional with you too.
Yeah. I have my life. It's pretty interesting life. Yeah. I in capoeira, to be honest, it to everyone, okay, in capoeira, it's like that. Capoeira, it can be. It's not like something that you always gonna be with your studio full of students. It goes like this. Like sometimes you have a few students, sometimes you have a lot of students, and that's how it is with capoeira. But I never gave up. Another example, it was during the COVID, the pandemic. Most of my friends here in US, they were living off capoeira, they were just teaching capoeira full time, they just quit, because they couldn't teach capoeira. They wouldn't go via Zoom. They would accept that. So now they're doing other jobs because they just gave up of capoeira. Some of them, they're still teaching capoeira on the side, but they have other jobs. They're like, no, I feel more secure, having like this specific job. And I don't judge, but to me, I believe in capoeira, and I know that I can be I can use capoeira as a tool to transform people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like my capoeira journey has been ups and downs too. The first time I joined capoeira is mostly because of like rehab reason. I found out every time I practice capoeira, my training injury just feels so much better, and so I come back. But then after pregnancy, I sort of stopped a little bit, and we start traveling around. And when I was traveling around, I sort of want to like pursue it myself. Oh, it's not the focus of my life. It's okay to like not practicing capoeira. Maybe I'll come back in the future. But then we went to Barcelona, and then I dropped in for one course, and I realized how much my body and my mind feel different because of that one class. And like I feel like I finally am in present during my 3 months travel. And that's also the time I realized when I come back to Austin, I have to commit to capoeira. Like I have to show up, I have to keep practicing, and I can't just doing this like not setting goals for myself anymore, because I think for the first year after the body saddle, I'm sort of like, oh, I'm not a person who like quantitative goals. Like I'm an adult now. I don't need a build to define me. Like I train whenever I want to train, and it's just not working. And so like this time I think it's internally I also decide that I want to commit, and that really just make things go so much more smoothly too. So from your perspective, you've seen so many students going on their capoeira journey. What are some mental qualities that make one stay and keep progressing forward?
It's exactly the way you describe, like your experience, once they realize that how much capoeira can help them in a different ways, they stay in capoeira, they stay in class, they continue taking classes, and I think the capoeira can be okay to people, but it can be really good as well. Why I say that? Because if the person leading a capoeira school, it's not committed with using these tools of capoeira to really transform people's lives and help them in the different aspects of their lives, capoeira can be just a workout. It can be just like, you go to the gym, you work out and leave, all right? And I also know a lot of people, they put a lot of violence in the capoeira, they use the capoeira just to really have the combat, like...
Release their angers.
Yes, yes. So anyway, I think if a person that it's training capoeira starts to realize, like how rich capoeira is and how many ways capoeira can contribute to their lives, it doesn't matter what they do. Like I have students that they're like lawyers. I have students that they're like valet drivers. I have students that they're a judge. Like they have different jobs, they have different backgrounds, but once they come to capoeira in a united environment where they start to feel that we are human beings,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't matter what's your skills in your job, but here we're just one. Mm-hmm. And we can be silly, we can be challenging each other, like once they start to notice that, they never stop capoeira, like they can stop for a little bit. In your case, you're pregnant, like that process you have to respect, like, but then you feel the necessity, you feel the need to go back to capoeira, so yeah, I think that one capoeira is something that you either like or you don't, like I know a lot of people that they think capoeira is really cool, but it's not for them. They already tried and it's okay. It's okay, like sometimes they like just to watch capoeira. It's all good. It's all good. But people that like capoeira, like it doesn't matter. You can quit capoeira for 10 years. If you listen to the berimbau, you're gonna feel like goosebumps, and you're gonna like, I want to play, So yeah, once the mosquito bites you, forget it.
Yeah, it's really so special. Do you do you have any like student stories that stand out to you?
I have, yeah, it's been over 40 years teaching, so I have several, like beautiful stories, like couples getting together, they get to know each other in class. Couples that came to capoeira together and they split up, not because of me, it's just because that happened. But like things that happened in class, students that became really, really close friends. And I had one person that was back in Connecticut, that he was maybe like early 70s, and he used to bring his grandson to class, right? And one day I mentioned to him, why don't you try capoeira? And he's like, ha, 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 like, do you know how old I am? I said, I don't, but I don't need to know how old you are. And he's like, nah, that's not for me, like I'm 71, I don't know. I don't remember the exact age. Anyway, to make the story short, one day I convinced him to try, and he started. He started taking capoeira classes. And one day, after training for like 6 months, he came back to me like with his smile, like, pretty big smile on his face, and it's like, hey, Gui, you have no idea. I went to the doctor to do my routine, and the doctor said, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop, because, like all the results are amazing. And all he had like arthritis on his hands, that he couldn't move much. He was a truck driver. So I believe for driving for many years, for too long, he couldn't move much his hands, and he was doing cartwheels, he was doing handstands at 72. And he said, look, besides that, I never done any type of body movements or exercise my whole entire life. That's the first time I'm doing something. So that to me, it stands out like big time, because like I felt that not me, it was not me. If it was like any other instructor, would have the same impact, but through capoeira I could help someone, like in this way, like in his health. Yeah, and he trained for a couple more years, and yeah, he stopped for I don't remember the reason, but yeah, that was something that I never forgot anymore. Yeah.
You've been teaching and practicing capoeira for so long. Has your relationship with capoeira changed over time?
It did. It did. Our beliefs when we were younger, and now, like 20 years later, a lot of things has changed. Like I see capoeira with different eyes. I used to be super harsh on myself, and super hard on myself, and put a lot of pressure on my training, and spend like 3-4 hours training a day, and then I see that there's no need for that. You know, like you can still be good in it, on it. You can still have progress, and you don't need to, you know, to be that hard on yourself. So training wise and teaching wise, it has changed a lot. Yeah, yeah, and keep changing all the time. You know, like I now even to, you know, like I used to think like, okay, so I have to make really good students. I used to think like that, you know, like all my students, they need to be good. They need to be like a, you know, a good example of capoeiristas. Now I don't think this way. I think that I can help them in a different other ways using capoeira. You know, of course, you know, like I'm gonna push them to for them to be, you know, an average capoeirista or a good capoeirista, but I want to go with the flow. I don't want to, you know, like injure someone because I'm pushing them too hard. You know, so I see capoeira totally different now. Yeah, yeah.
So thank you so much for your sharing today. We are like approaching the end of the interview. I wonder if you have any words to say to those who wanted to try capoeira.
Yeah, I first I want to, you know, just thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here with you,
fun.
sharing my story and sharing a little bit about capoeira. And if you listened to this interview, you see how much we talked about capoeira, what's the benefits of capoeira. So if I have something to tell you, I would say it doesn't matter your limitations, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your religion or whatever, you know, you think that would stop you to take the first class. Just come take a class. If you're not in Austin, you can go anywhere else in the world, capoeira in pretty much all countries in this world. Go and take a capoeira class, all right? I bet that you know, you're gonna learn something fun, and maybe the mosquito, it's gonna bite you and you're gonna stay in capoeira forever.
Yeah, thank you so much. We have a batizado coming up in April. Would you like to talk more about that?
That's correct. Yeah, in capoeira, as karate or judo, we have the graduation, right, where the students they promote, they get their belts, and we have once a year we have a batizado. It's called batizado, which is a celebration where when the students they are training through all the year, and then one day we have this big event where the students they're gonna get their belts. So we invite mestres or guests from all over the country to come and teach you special workshops. And then it's like two full days of workshops, and then they have the batizado ceremony towards the end of the day on Saturday. So it's going to be April 12th, Friday night, and Saturday the 13th, April 13th, all day long from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Cool, thank you. And where can our listeners find you?
Excuse me. So you can find me on Instagram at Capoeira Austin. You can find me on my using my website, capoeiraaustin.com. And yes, and we are here in Austin, on the east side of Austin, located at 2015 East Riverside Drive, Building 7.
That's very detailed information. I love that you remembered that. And I will also put all the links in our show note. Thank you so much for sharing your story,
Algodão.
Gui.
Thank you so much. You all have a nice day.